Linda Fiorentino was once known as one of the most intense and captivating women in Hollywood. In the 1990s, she had a reputation that made directors nervous and audiences fascinated. She became famous for her mysterious looks, her strong presence, and the kind of roles that most actresses were afraid to take. She worked in hit movies like Men in Black and helped studios make millions of dollars. But today, at 67 years old, she lives almost completely off the grid. She stays in a quiet, hidden cabin and spends her days writing long handwritten letters and growing tomatoes. Locals say she's polite but feels like a ghost passing through. Netflix once offered her a huge amount of money, $200,000, to appear in a project, but she refused because she wanted to stay hidden. Many people wonder what happened to her and why a woman who suddenly had so much power and fame simply walked away. The truth is complicated. It involves the FBI, a major scandal worth billions of dollars, and some of Hollywood's most powerful people. Her disappearance was not something she fully chose. It was something she felt forced into after the world around her became too dangerous. Linda's birth name was Linda Fiorentino. She was born on March 9, 1958, in Philadelphia. She was the third of 8 children in a very large Italian-American family. With so many kids, the house was always loud, crowded, and full of energy. One of her sisters, Dee, later became a model and married 2 well-known filmmakers, David Fincher and Gary Oldman. Growing up in such a big family meant Linda had to fight to be noticed. That early competition shaped her personality and taught her how to be bold, sharp, and unafraid to speak her mind. Even as a child, she showed signs of being unusually smart. But instead of being quiet and obedient, she constantly challenged her teachers, especially the nuns at her Catholic school. She argued with them about the Bible, questioned things that other kids accepted, and pushed back whenever something didn't make sense to her. The nuns sometimes found her arguments amusing, but for her, they were serious. She was already developing the habit of questioning authority, something that would follow her for the rest of her life. Her family lived in working-class neighborhoods in South Philadelphia, where life was noisy and tough. As a middle child in a big family, she learned quickly how to stand up for herself. She played sports with her brothers, especially basketball, and refused to be pushed around. She grew into a young woman who looked shy at times but carried a hidden strength inside her. Her father, Salvatore Fiorentino, worked as a steel contractor, spending long days welding to support the family. Her mother, also named Clorinda, stayed home and took care of all 8 kids. Money was always tight. Her father passed away much later, in 2018, at the age of 93, but the world he built around her, one filled with discipline and hard work, never left her. You could hear it in her voice in her movies. In The Last Seduction, released in 1994, her deep tone and sharp expressions made her look like someone who had grown up fighting for her place in the world, and in many ways, she had. Growing up in a crowded house was not easy. Her mother once said Linda was incredibly bold but also secretly shy. She was a mix of confidence and insecurity. That contradiction stayed with her all her life. Her house was always full of people talking, arguing, and moving around. With so many siblings, privacy barely existed. That pushed her to become fiercely independent from a young age. She wasn't just physically strong, she was mentally tough. She played baseball and basketball and often won against boys who underestimated her. Later in her acting career, she made it very clear she didn't want soft romantic roles. She said she didn't want to be the next cute girl in Hollywood. She didn't want to be like Meg Ryan or any of the actresses who played sweet characters. She wanted roles with edge, danger, and depth. That attitude came from watching her father work and growing up in a house where toughness was a necessity. Her Italian heritage was a major part of her childhood. Her family held big Sunday dinners where they cooked handmade pasta and rich sauces that simmered for hours. These gatherings were full of loud conversations, laughter, and people coming and going. Her family also celebrated Epiphany every January 6th, a holiday involving the legend of La Befana, who brings gifts or coal to children. These traditions shaped her passionate personality. She later compared her family energy to Italian folk dances like the pizzica, where people expressed deep emotion through movement. But at the same time, She never fully followed the strict Catholic expectations placed on her. She often pushed back against religious rules and questions of morality. In college, she joined a group of theater students, many from wealthy Puerto Rican and Cuban families, which opened up a completely different world for her. That was when she stopped thinking about becoming a lawyer and decided she wanted to act. The idea shocked her family, but she was determined. Her family eventually moved from Philadelphia to Turnersville, New Jersey. Linda attended Washington Township High School from 1972 to 1976. She continued being the same curious, argumentative student she had always been, but she also excelled in sports. She earned varsity letters in basketball and baseball. She was even a cheerleader. She always found ways to move, to express energy, and to show confidence. Years later, her physical strength helped her win her breakthrough role in the movie Vision Quest in 1985. She beat actresses like Demi Moore for the part because she was believable as someone strong and self-assured. The move from the tough streets of Philadelphia to a quieter New Jersey suburb changed her a lot. It helped her learn how to adapt to different environments. At home, she was the daughter of a welder and one of many siblings. At school, she stood out as someone talented and bold. After graduating in 1976, she attended Rosemont College, where she studied political science and also took photography classes. She finished her degree in 1980. At one point, she seriously thought about going to law school. But one of her professors saw something unusual in her. He told her she belonged on a stage, not in a courtroom. That comment changed everything. She started performing in college theater productions, and something inside her lit up. Acting felt natural to her. She discovered she had a voice, a presence, and a fire that made her different from others. To pay her bills during college, she worked as a waitress in Philadelphia. These jobs might have seemed small, but they taught her valuable lessons. She learned how to read people, understand emotions, and handle difficult situations calmly. Those skills helped her create layered, believable characters later in her acting career. When she eventually moved to New York, she got a job bartending at a nightclub called Kamikaze, where she worked alongside Bruce Willis before he became famous. She watched people closely every night. All those experiences made their way into her acting. When critics praised her for speaking calmly and powerfully in Vision Quest, that wasn't something she learned in a classroom. It came from real-life experience, long nights dealing with customers, standing her ground, and trying to survive in a tough city. After college, in 1980, Linda moved to New York full-time. She enrolled at the International Center of Photography, where she focused on black and white portraits. She loved photography because it required attention to detail and emotional awareness. She also joined the circle in the Square Theatre School, where she studied under respected acting teachers. During the day, she took acting classes. At night, she worked at bars and practiced photography. She lived a double life filled with art, work, and survival. Later, when she directed documentaries about autism and juvenile diabetes, she used the same sensitivity she had developed while studying photography. Life in New York wasn't easy. Between 1981 and 1983, she auditioned for over 30 soap operas. Casting directors kept rejecting her. They said her eyes were too intense, her presence too strong. They thought she didn't fit soft television roles. She kept hearing the same message: she scared the camera. She didn't book a single role for almost 2 years. At one point, she auditioned for 4 to 7 roles in a single year and got none of them. She was broke, exhausted, and close to quitting. One night, after missing the last train home, she slept on a park bench. But she refused to give up. She knew she had something, and she trusted that eventually someone else would see it too. In 1983, she took a modeling job in Milan because she needed money. She posed for designers like Versace and Armani. She didn't like modeling, it made her feel objectified, but she earned $5,000 per photo shoot, which kept her alive. She did 12 magazine spreads that year, even working in extreme heat in Rome to finish a job. Modeling paid for her rent and acting classes. She later said the work felt empty, but she accepted it because it allowed her to continue chasing her real dream. In 1984, she made a decision that upset her family. she legally changed her name from Clorinda to Linda. Agents told her Clorinda sounded too ethnic and might hurt her chances in Hollywood. The change cost her $200. Her mother cried because she felt her daughter was abandoning her roots. But Linda believed it was necessary. Her big break finally came in 1985. That year, she starred as Carla in the movie Vision Quest. She didn't play the typical romantic woman. She played a quiet, mysterious artist whose presence lingered in every scene. Critics were fascinated by her. Roger Ebert said she made people listen by simply speaking softly. Her chemistry with Matthew Modine was so important that the director reshot their scenes again and again until he felt the connection was strong enough. All that extra filming made the cast tired, but it paid off. The movie earned almost $13 million and gave Linda her first group of devoted fans. She was suddenly on Hollywood's radar. Only a few months later, she appeared in Gotcha, playing a Czech spy named Sasha who pulls a young American into a dangerous world. The action scenes were intense. During one scene, a high-speed chase on wet roads nearly ended in a crash because the car slipped in the rain. Filming had to stop for hours. She refused to use a stunt double, insisting on doing the dangerous work herself. The movie made over $10 million. Although she didn't love the script, she gave it everything she had. Later that year, she starred in Martin Scorsese's After Hours as Kiki, an artist with a dark, unusual personality. Her performance was unforgettable. She improvised a long, strange scene in a shadowy club, speaking lines that weren't in the script. The scene lasted 4 minutes and became one of the most talked-about moments of the film. Even though she sometimes clashed with people on set, her performance was powerful and left a haunting impression on audiences. After Hours made more than $10 million and strengthened her image as someone who didn't just act, she transformed into her characters. By the end of 1985, everyone believed Linda Fiorentino was about to become one of Hollywood's biggest stars. She had beauty, talent, and a dangerous charm that no one else could match. But behind that rising success was a long, painful path filled with rejections, struggles, and moments where she nearly gave up. All those experiences shaped the woman who would later step into some of the boldest roles in Hollywood history and who would eventually disappear when the pressures became too much. By July of that year, Variety magazine was praising her openly. They called her bold, sexy, and smart. Scripts were coming in fast, more than 20 offers in a single season. But even with all the attention, something troubling started to appear. Hollywood wanted to see her one way: seductive, dangerous, and mysterious. That was the type of role they kept pushing on her. Linda didn't like being boxed in like that. She turned down Top Gun because she disagreed with its military message, and she even refused Basic Instinct, the movie that would later define another actress. Empire magazine listed her among the 100 sexiest stars in 1995, ranking her 66th, but Linda didn't care about being seen as a sex symbol. What she wanted most was to be respected as a serious actress. 3 years after her explosive start, she entered a very different world. In 1988, she starred in The Moderns, playing Rachel, an American woman drifting through 1920s Paris, caught up in love, jealousy, and the art world. This was her territory. She had just studied photography at the International Center of Photography in New York, and she applied everything she learned to the role. She even tried to speak French on set, even though she barely knew the language. That effort gave her performance a raw, fragile beauty. One scene, in which her controlling husband shaves her underarms with a straight razor, was both intimate and terrifying. The movie did not perform well financially. It earned just $2 million against a budget of $3.5 million, but her performance left a lasting impression. You could already see the beginnings of the femme fatale persona she would later fully embody. In 1991, she starred in a small film called Queen's Logic. Almost nobody watched it, and it earned just over $600,000 at the box office. But inside that modest movie was something special. She played Carla, a woman fed up with men's immaturity and games. In one emotional scene, she completely breaks down. It wasn't acting, it was real. She drew on her childhood in South Philadelphia, growing up in a chaotic household with 7 siblings, where emotions ran high and everyone was always in each other's space. Her co-stars were shocked by the raw honesty of her tears. Even in a cast full of talented actors, she stood out because of the truth she brought to her role. The next year, she appeared in Chain of Desire, a provocative story about intertwined lovers. She played a nightclub singer and had to perform scenes that made many viewers uncomfortable. One particularly shocking scene, set in a church basement, involved a raw encounter with a man named Jesus. It sparked controversy, with some calling it sacrilegious while others hailed it as art. For Fiorentino, it was neither. She said it was simply about showing human longing, fear, and desire honestly. The story took a heavy turn when her character discovers her ex-lover has AIDS, a shocking revelation at a time when the disease was terrifying everyone. The film earned very little money, only around $4,000, but her performance lingered in the minds of those who saw it. Linda also tried television. In 1989, she appeared in The Neon Empire, a CBS miniseries watched by 20 million people. She played Lucy, a smart, manipulative mobster's wife during the early days of Las Vegas. The story was gritty and based on real gangsters, and her performance hinted at the dangerous, magnetic roles she would soon become famous for. The show aired during a slow period in her career when few other projects were coming her way, but it gave her a chance to show off her sharp, commanding presence. That edge, that intensity, was about to explode on the big screen. Everything changed in 1994 with The Last Seduction. Linda Fiorentino didn't just act in this movie, she dominated it. She played Bridget Gregory, a woman completely in control of her life and her actions. After being physically abused, Bridget stole $700,000 from her husband and ran away, taking on a fake identity, Wendy Croy, which was a clever play on New York. She seduced an innocent man, not out of love, but simply to manipulate and control him. She wasn't a victim, she was the player, the one running the game. One scene, in particular, became iconic, the phone sex sequence. In just 2 minutes, she shifted from a quiet whisper to commanding every beat of the conversation. It wasn't simply sexy, it was frightening in its intensity. Critics loved it. She won the New York Film Critics Circle Award that year. But behind the camera, the shoot was far from easy. Filming took place in Buffalo during the dead of winter in 1993. Temperatures often dropped below -10 degrees, and blizzards frequently shut down production. When nature didn't cooperate, the crew had to bring in truckloads of fake snow. Despite these conditions, Fiorentino pushed through every challenge with her usual determination. Her performance in The Last Seduction was a turning point. Audiences had never seen a woman like Bridget Gregory before, a character who was unapologetically clever, dangerous, and unflinchingly in control. Linda had built this persona from years of struggle, observation, and personal experience. She had grown up in a noisy, competitive household in South Philadelphia, learned to stand her ground as a child, survived the harsh streets and later the demanding world of New York, and all of it showed in her commanding presence. Even after this success, Hollywood continued to try to box her in. Directors saw her as the seductive, dangerous woman, the perfect femme fatale. She got offers for romantic and sexualized roles that ignored her intelligence and subtlety. She didn't mind being admired, but she wanted depth. She wanted characters with layers, complications, and real emotion. Roles like Bridget Gregory allowed her to combine intelligence, sexuality, and psychological control, showing what she was capable of on screen. By the mid-1990s, Linda Fiorentino was one of the highest-paid actresses in Hollywood, earning around $1 million per film. But despite the money and fame, she began to pull away from the spotlight. She grew weary of Hollywood's pressure, of being reduced to an image instead of being recognized for her craft. She started to decline projects and invitations, moving toward a more private life. That decision surprised many. Here was a woman at the top of her game, yet she chose to step back and disappear from the public eye, prioritizing her peace over continued fame and fortune. Her disappearance was sudden but rooted in years of careful observation. She had seen the dark side of the industry, the manipulation, the power struggles, and the way women were often controlled or exploited. She wanted none of it. Linda's retreat into a quiet, solitary life wasn't a failure, it was a choice to live authentically, away from the chaos of fame and expectation. By the time she rejected Netflix and began growing tomatoes in her remote cabin, she had already lived a life most could only imagine, a life full of struggle, triumph, and intense creativity. Even now, people speak of her as ghostly polite. She doesn't chase attention, she doesn't crave the spotlight, and she refuses to play the games that once dominated her world. Linda Fiorentino remains a rare example of someone who succeeded on their own terms and then chose to step away entirely, keeping the mystique that Hollywood could never control. Her legacy is not just in the movies she made, but in the strength, intelligence, and independence she carried into every role and ultimately into her life itself. Linda Fiorentino was never one to take a back seat. On the set of The Last Seduction, she rewrote many of her own lines to make her character, Bridget Gregory, even bolder. She argued with the director about how far she could push the scenes. She even choreographed the sex scenes herself, including one memorable encounter against a chain-link fence. Her co-star, Peter Berg, later said he just hung on for dear life while she took full control of the performance. But despite her talent and hard work, she was blocked from Oscar consideration. The film had aired on HBO at midnight before it even hit theaters, which violated Academy rules. Critics like Roger Ebert were outraged, calling it a crime against art. Fiorentino still won the Independent Spirit Award and several others, but the Oscar snub hurt deeply. She later said that women who played dark, twisted roles were punished, while men doing similar roles were celebrated. At the London Film Critics event in 1995, she even told the audience that it felt good to be evil and get paid for it. People were shocked by her honesty, but that was just her being true to herself. After The Last Seduction, Hollywood began to treat her differently. Studios grew nervous and called her dangerous. They said family audiences wouldn't accept her anymore. Some big-name actresses had even turned down the role in The Last Seduction because they didn't want to be seen as unlikable. The studio dismissed the movie as a skin flick and released it to HBO instead. Just like that, Linda was boxed in, labeled as difficult, and increasingly kept away from mainstream projects. In 1997, she appeared in Men in Black, playing a smart, sarcastic coroner who eventually joins the secret agency. The movie was a massive success, making nearly $600 million worldwide. Few people knew, however, that she had won the role in a poker game with the director, walking away with the part and $1,200 in cash. Still, rumors about her being hard to work with began to spread. She refused to return for the sequels. That same year, she starred in Jade, another erotic thriller, playing a psychologist entangled in murder and sexual intrigue. One scene was so explicit that the censors cut out over 2 minutes of footage. The director later called the final product butchered. The film flopped at the box office, and gossip about alleged affairs only made her reputation more complicated. In 1996, she took on a different kind of project, Larger Than Life, starring alongside Bill Murray and an 8,000-pound elephant. The movie was unusual, and Murray later said he cried filming the final bath scene with the elephant. Despite their dedication, the film failed at the box office, leaving audiences unsure what to make of Linda Fiorentino anymore. In 1999, she appeared in Dogma, a movie that should have solidified her legacy. Instead, it sparked controversy that would follow her for years. Director Kevin Smith publicly criticized her in the DVD commentary, accusing her of creating chaos on set and claiming she couldn't handle that Matt Damon and Ben Affleck were more famous than her. He also said she refused to promote the film after objecting to a poster that exaggerated her cleavage. In interviews, Smith continued to paint her as difficult, and Hollywood quickly labeled her as hard to work with. That reputation followed her for the rest of her career. Almost 2 decades later, however, an unexpected reconciliation occurred. After Kevin Smith suffered a heart attack in 2018, Linda reached out via email. That single message broke through years of bitterness. Smith apologized, admitting that his public comments about her being unsuitable for Dogma were cruel and meant as a joke at someone else's expense. He praised her work and finally took some responsibility for the rumors that had damaged her reputation. But by then, the damage had been done. Her absence from Men in Black sequels is another example of how Hollywood moved on without her. After the first film grossed nearly $589 million, she was set up as Will Smith's partner in the story. By the sequel in 2002, she was gone. Her character was written out with a single line, saying she had returned to her work as a medical examiner. Rumors circulated that Tommy Lee Jones refused to return unless she was removed, though no one confirmed this officially. Hollywood found a scapegoat, and she faded from the franchise without a proper send-off. In 2002, she appeared in Liberty Stands Still, a thriller with Wesley Snipes, playing a gun executive held hostage in a phone booth. The film had an intense and timely premise but failed completely, earning less than $600,000 against an $11 million budget. It went straight to video in most markets. Critics praised her performance but criticized the script and direction. The movie lacked promotion, momentum, or support, disappearing just as she had started to vanish from Hollywood herself. After that, her appearances became rare. She didn't act for 7 years, resurfacing only in a small cameo in 2009's Once More with Feeling, a quiet comedy about karaoke dreams. It didn't make headlines, barely reached audiences, and served as her quiet exit. From that point on, Linda Fiorentino became a ghost in the industry. Her career decline wasn't just about a few bad films or disagreements on set. It was also about how Hollywood labeled her. Kevin Smith's words stuck, but there were darker undercurrents. In 1998, during the casting of Dogma, she reportedly refused Harvey Weinstein's advances. After landing the role anyway, some believe he quietly began a campaign to ruin her reputation. Rumors of a deliberate smear circulated for years, and by 2009, her appearances had dropped drastically from 15 films in the 1990s to only 4 in the 2000s. Her life off-screen was equally dramatic. In 2008, her name appeared in the Anthony Pellicano wiretapping scandal. She had been romantically involved with FBI agent Mark Rossini, who illegally accessed classified files about her ex, billionaire Stephen Bing. Rossini admitted to breaking the law over 40 times and eventually pleaded guilty, receiving probation and a small fine. Fiorentino passed the files to Pellicano's legal team, claiming it was for a screenplay, though the situation sounded stranger than fiction. She was never charged, but the headlines painted her as a real-life femme fatale. Reports suggested she may have also helped dig dirt on other ex-lovers, further fueling the gossip. Her personal life mirrored the chaos of her career. In 1992, she married director John Byam, but the marriage lasted just 11 months. They had met 4 years earlier while working on a film that was never completed. After the divorce, she vowed never to marry again. Around the same time, tabloids linked her romantically to her Queen's Logic co-star Jamie Sheridan and billionaire Ted Foreman, who reportedly flew her on private jets and showered her with lavish gifts. In 1997, she sued twice for privacy violations. By the early 2000s, she was finished with Hollywood, shifting her focus to photography, a long-held passion. Her photography, particularly raw black and white portraits, revealed the same intensity and emotional depth she brought to acting. In 2012, she held a solo exhibition in New York, earning praise from the New York Times for her ability to capture emotion more vividly than many professionals who had worked in the field for decades. By 2015, she reportedly made $150,000 from photography alone. Fame was no longer her goal, she wanted solitude and authenticity. Today, at 67, Linda Fiorentino lives far from Hollywood. She spends her time either in Westport, Connecticut, or in a remote cabin in New York. She sold her home in 2014 and lives off residuals, reportedly earning around $500,000 a year from Men in Black alone. She has no social media, gives no interviews, and makes no public appearances. In 2023, she even turned down a $200,000 Netflix documentary. Locals say she grows tomatoes, photographs wildlife, and communicates through handwritten letters rather than emails. One neighbor described her as ghostly polite. Her silence has only added to her legend. She skipped the 2017 Men in Black anniversary reunion, the 2024 Jade cast reunion, and even the 2000 Oscars, despite her award-winning performance in The Last Seduction. She reportedly turned down at least 15 roles after 2002, often refusing parts unless scripts were altered to remove exploitative scenes. She wasn't bitter, she simply refused to play Hollywood's game. Her fans, however, never stopped watching. On her 67th birthday in March 2025, over 5,000 Instagram posts celebrated her. Many called her the ultimate femme fatale. Clips from the Last Seduction set to music went viral, and one post simply read, 67 and still seducing from the shadows. There was even a petition with thousands of signatures asking her to return to acting. Anonymous fans claimed to have seen her in New York that day, and one said she smiled at them, a fleeting connection from a woman who had become a living legend in her own right. Linda Fiorentino's story is unlike any other. She rose to fame on her own terms, challenged Hollywood's expectations, and then chose to disappear, keeping her integrity intact. Her legacy isn't measured by awards or box office numbers alone, but by her strength, independence, and the boldness that defined both her career and her life. Even decades later, she remains an enigma, a ghostly figure who proved that it's possible to win the world's attention and then walk away from it.